and welcome to Spinster's Library. I'm Claudia and I've got Pauline here. I'll link her YouTube channel in the description box, and we are at my parents' house. So it's kind of a coincidence there's actually books in the background. So
it's all like Italian books apparently.
It's all like Italian grammar and stuff like that. But the reason why I wanted to sit down with Pauline here is because we come from kind of different cultures and we have both moved abroad. And I really quite like to talk about the differences in buying books, shopping for books in the countries that we know. Mm-hmm. So I am originally from Germany and I now live in Wales in the United Kingdom.
I'm originally from Alsace in France and I moved almost 10 years ago to Germany.
Yeah, so we're both a bit familiar with buying books in Germany, but I know nothing about what it's like in France. When it comes to like Germany and UK differences, the biggest one is fixed book pricing, which is a law in Germany, has been my entire life. I don't know when it was introduced, which basically sets the price for a book, and it doesn't matter where you buy this book, it will always be that price. It cannot be reduced, it cannot go on sale, it can't be sold for half price, you can't get like buy one, get one free. So a book has the price printed on the back, and that's how much you pay for it. And I understand it's the same in France.
I mean, it's funny because when you enter a bookshop in France, most of the big companies that sell books have you have these posters of prices, and it's like tables, and on the back of each book, like typical paperback books, you have it tells you what category book it is.
Oh, like a code.
So it would tell you it's a C3 category, and that means therefore the book costs whatever, and you just have to look on the poster. So it also, you don't even have to label every single book. So that's also good because then you don't have these stupid sticky labels on the books.
Yeah, well, you don't have them in Germany because the price is just printed on there. Yeah. And then when you get a book for someone else and then you say it's a gift, they get a big marker pen.
Mark it. Yeah. That's just a normal thing to do.
But I'm not in the publishing industry. I don't know anything about book publishing. So my opinion on the fixed pricing is fairly neutral. I don't really have, I'm not pro or against it. I've heard from a lot of German publishers and people working in the publishing industry that it is a good thing. It protects authors, it protects independent bookshops as well, because they don't have to compete with the chain bookshops and with Amazon. But on the other hand, I like a bargain. So if I walk into a Waterstones and it's, 50% off everything, which never happens, but you get discounts, then I'm not against that either. But how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I don't know. I remember when I was younger in France, I just went to secondhand bookshops, and there are not many of them, but there's usually a few in some big cities. So when I didn't have much money as young person, I went there. So, but it was less I would just pick whatever I liked. It wasn't still now I'm not really absolutely always interested in new releases, so it's not you always have to buy the book when it comes out new, but I think if you do, it's quite expensive in France.
Yes.
Another thing, on the other hand, I feel is that paperbacks come out really faster than, for example, what I see from publication dates in, for example, the UK or the US. Because I feel you have to wait such a long time for a paperback to get it cheaper. And in France, I think books are just in general a bit cheaper. A paperback would cost highest maybe €6.
No, really?
Yeah.
Wow, okay, no, you definitely pay much more than that here.
I mean, definitely, you can really, I could show you once, but the quality of the book, if it's one of these cheap paperbacks, it's not brilliant quality, obviously. The pages are very thin. If you compare them to German books, but I think especially English books, the pages are really thin. Sometimes you can see the writing from the other side. Yeah. But I just don't know. I don't mind. I'm used to that, I guess. And I also, I don't know. I'm maybe also really biased because I just think hardbacks are a bit a waste of resources, to be really honest. And they're just expensive, and there's so many people who always wait for the paperbacks. So that, I think, is definitely a positive thing. And I mean, there are hardbacks in France, but they're really, you don't find that often. And I think they cost about the same price than in Germany, something over 15, 16 euros, something
Yeah,
like this.
I think hardbacks here are more like 20, 21 euros, and then for a paperback you pay like 12 to 15.
Yeah.
Whereas in the UK you get books for like under £5. Even hardbacks you get really cheap. You pay a lot for new releases, but then they become old very quickly and you get them on offer. I mostly read secondhand books as well growing up in Germany. I didn't have a secondhand shop in my hometown, so most of the books were hand-me-downs from my mum's friends, which is why my children's book tastes are very much that of a 65-year-old woman. But I didn't really mind that. I read them anyway. And then there is what we call an antiquarian bookshop, which sells old books, but it also sells misprints, and they are exempt from this fixed price law. So I read a lot of misprints as well, and you don't really like notice the misprints usually, but you get them a lot cheaper.
That's a big thing in Germany. The Mengenexemplare. You also curiously find them in like new bookshops as well. Sometimes you have like little boxes of them.
Yeah,
and that's the place you can get the cheaper books.
It's the only way to get cheaper books that aren't secondhand in Germany. So I think if I had to buy all of the books new that I read, I definitely wouldn't have the budget for it. What's the library system like in France?
I honestly only went to one library in my whole life, and it was this bus library. So it was a subsidiary from the library in my home city, but it went around the different
that's so cool.
neighborhoods and also the small towns around. So it came once a week, and I don't remember paying for anything. I think my mom probably paid a yearly fee, but I think it's quite cheap. She's still using it now, and I think it's like, I don't know, 20 euros a year or something. And where I am currently in Germany, I also have a library card, and it's 12 euros for a whole year.
Right. I think as a child you never pay. If you're under 18, you don't have to pay for a library card in Germany. In the UK, you don't have to pay at all, I don't think. I don't think I paid for my library card in the UK.
Okay.
But I found that the libraries here that I've been to in Germany have a bigger offering. They are more just bigger buildings with more books in them. The library that I go to in the UK is quite a small kind of room. And I don't get the feeling like they have a lot of stock, like they have, new releases and things like that as well. I've always been the sort of person that's preferred to own books anyway, just because I'm so careless and I don't want to break someone else's property.
So I don't suppose they have non-English books in the library?
In where I go, they have Welsh books. So they probably have about 50-50 split in English and Welsh books. Maybe that's why it feels like there's fewer books as well, because half of the library I can't even read. But if you go to a library in England as opposed to Wales, then I suppose they would mostly have English books.
Yeah, okay. Where I am now, they have also, I think, 2 bookshelves with French books and 2 bookshelves with English books, which really surprised me. I don't know if it's just about the place I was. I don't know how it was for the library.
You live in a city as well. Yeah. That may be a bit more of a difference. No, I've never seen a foreign language book in my Welsh library. But most of the books that I buy now, and that's actually the one thing I'm going to miss when I move out of the UK, is buying secondhand books. Because in my hometown, it's got one high street. It's a very small town, but there's like over 10 charity shops, all with like substantial book collections, and you get like 3 paperbacks for £1 in the cheaper ones, and then the most expensive ones you have to pay like £2.50 for a book. So that's amazing. That's really good, especially because people tend to take a lot of classics there. You always find classics in charity shops. It's really good for me, and I'm going to miss that here, where we don't have a culture of secondhand books.
Yeah, I think, at least from what I felt like since living in Germany, I think a lot of people sell secondhand books on eBay. I think it's a big platform in Germany for books, and I often buy books from there, and I often buy classics from there, because I feel like it's the kinds of books that circulate a lot. Maybe you just studied it for a month in school and then you don't need it anymore. So.
Or you optimistically bought it and then didn't read it. That's a good idea. Yeah, eBay wasn't really that big when I moved out of here, so now I think that's where I'm going to. That's where I'm going to get most of my classics. And you can get a lot more foreign language classics now than you used to. I remember when I was a teenager and I was getting into Oscar Wilde, and also Amazon was a really new thing in Germany then. And I ordered this complete works of Oscar Wilde from Amazon. It had to come from America. And I paid like 35 euros for it or something. And it was like, wow, I ordered an English book to my little town in Germany. And now you just walk in the local bookshop and there's a whole shelf of English language books. Yeah. How hard was it for you to get hold of foreign language books?
Honestly, I don't know. Like, a lot of English books in my house were from my dad because he's an English teacher. So I just grabbed from there, to be honest, in the beginning. And
that's really lucky. Yeah, that's good.
But there was this one secondhand bookshop in my town where they sometimes had English books, and I got them there. But then I went to university, and that's when I started reading way more English books. And then, I mean, the internet was there, so...
Yes. The internet has definitely made reading easier. And it's given us more choice. But I think in the UK, because of this really competitive pricing, it has led to a decline in independent bookshops. There's hardly any. In my town in the UK, there aren't any. There's just a W.H. Smith, which isn't even like a real bookshop. And you have to drive half an hour to go to a Waterstones, which is also a chain. Yeah. So that's something that is a bit better here. We had a wander around my town earlier, and you noticed how many bookshops there were. There's only 3, but
they're all independent.
Well, the first one that we went to is a local chain. They've got a few shops in the southwest.
Yeah, that happens a lot in the town where I live. It's also there's this chain, and they have, I think, one main one and 2 smaller ones. But I think, you know, it's still not like
a huge company.
Yeah.
That's maybe where you see the difference with the fixed book pricing, where that makes a difference. But then also, bookshops here have started selling a lot of other things that aren't books. You know, obviously calendars, notebooks, merchandise, pillows, chocolates, all of that kind of stuff. And I can imagine that that's possibly to do with decline in sales. Like, I've never been in a bookshop that was full here. It's always you know, quite empty and quiet when I go. Yeah.
I do see that too, that they sell a lot of other stuff, and but I feel maybe it's also it's a bit of a German thing, and I actually really enjoy it, is that I think people here buy each other books more than, at least I remember it from France, like as gifts and stuff. And so that in bookshops here, there's a lot of little places where there's like some little trinkets and like chocolates and stuff, so you can really put together a nice little gift for someone, and you can have a book in there and some other stuff, and I don't know, book bag or whatever. I think it's if that's the only way for bookshops to kind of being able to compete while still keeping some kind of independence, I think it's really cool.
No, I don't mind it at all. And bookshops are great places to buy gifts here. They always have really unique and adorable things, definitely. And I don't know if you noticed, the first bookshop that we went to had a whole like cafe corner where they've got like a coffee vending machine. You can put €1 in to get a coffee, and some nice armchairs, and you can sit there with books that you haven't bought yet and look at them, and you know, they're quite happy to have you there. It's just a nice atmosphere here, and that's something that you don't get quite to the same degree in the UK, where it is more, you know, you have to go in, like buy something, and then you leave.
What I see in France, in terms of having other stuff than books in bookshops, I feel like often in France you have bookshops that are kind of coupled together with like multimedia shops. So you would also have, like, you would have a lot of books, but you will also have DVDs and CDs as well. So I guess that's also a way that they can diversify and make sure that they make enough sales.
Yeah, I haven't seen that here, a bookshop that sells DVDs.
Yeah, me neither.
But I think everywhere bookshops have to compete with Amazon. And the way they do that is differently. And in the UK, they've just decided to sell books for barely anything, you know, where you get these big discounts on them.
And I think I've noticed, especially as a person who reads English books and living in Germany, when I order an English book at my local bookshop, it's going to be more expensive than on Amazon.
Yes.
And so that means the book pricing in Germany is set for German-speaking books, but the English-speaking ones they're selling, Amazon can still sell them cheap, and bookshops here still have to make some kind of profit margin, so they're more expensive.
Yeah.
So, like, I just make the decision myself. Okay, it's worth to me that I pay this extra so that this bookshop gets something and not Amazon. But I think it's difficult. Like you cannot always afford it, and I also certainly don't always afford it. And
you get used to the convenience as well. Like I can order a book now and it's there here, like there tomorrow. And that's something that we've gotten used to, definitely. Yeah. So English books or foreign language books are not subject to book pricing laws here. So the bookshops can technically set their own prices. But like you said, there's no way they can compete with the big online shops.
They usually set the prices, like a paperback of an English book would be like just a little bit cheaper than the paperback from a German book. And that makes sense.
Yeah.
But
it's also about what people are used to paying. Like, I never thought that books were expensive. I mean, I knew I couldn't afford them, but I never thought that they were, like, unusually expensive until I moved to the UK and suddenly you get them
everything was so cheap. Yeah. No. I don't know. It's there's also a lot to say about what we feel like books are worth. And, I mean, I don't know how it was for you buying books as a younger person, but for me it was like a big thing, like being able to afford a book and then having so much fun with it. And I mean, I also reread a lot of my books a lot.
Oh yeah, me too, yeah.
And I read the Nancy Drew series when I was younger, and I used to hunt secondhand bookshops for like the ones that I didn't have in my collection. And at my parents' house is this like whole bookshop full of these books in different editions from like the 1950s to the 1990s. And it's just, it meant something to have this extra book in your collection. And I think also, not just only on BookTube, but in general, we have this consumeristic way of buying books and needing always more. And then the I don't know, the wallet, the value of this certain book just gets
because it's just one of many books on your TBR that you haven't read yet, and my TBR is just the same, like I'm not any different. But I remember my brother and me saving up for the latest Harry Potter, like whatever the latest Harry Potter was at the moment, because they were so expensive. They were like 40 euros for like the latest one, and my brother and I would save our pocket money, and then because I was the older one, I got to read it first, and I was like much faster reader than him anyway. And then we'd take these books on holiday and we would like ration them, because my mum was like, you can only take one book each on holiday. So obviously we had to pick a book that we both liked and then read one chapter at a time. And books were kind of more special because they were a rarer commodity. Now I can take £15, go to the charity shop and come back with 15 books. And then I put them on my shelf and forget about them. It's just a different way of dealing with books, which is a bit of a shame, but I don't know how you could change that. It's just modern times and we as people changing. It sounds like German and French book buying is fairly similar, and then the UK is maybe more like how they buy books in America.
I feel like, but also you mentioned that you feel like also that per year more books come out there, so it's always like the newer book have to compete with the ones that are just a few months old or something. And
I also feel like there's a lot more book prices in the UK.
Different book prices.
Like more, there's all these prices that are being advertised and short lists and long lists coming out, and booktubers making prediction videos and stuff.
Yeah, it's a whole thing.
And I'm like, there's no way I can even keep up with all of these prices.
I feel like from what I gather also from watching UK booktubers and everything, I feel like, they value a lot their literature and their reading community and that people read and so on. And I think it's the same in France and Germany, but maybe it just doesn't manifest itself as strongly. And I think it's a good point with the different prizes, because there obviously are different kinds of prizes also in France and in Germany, but you don't hear it as often, and they're not mediatized as much, I think. And I don't know, I feel also, I don't know if it's you have the same feeling, but I have also this feeling that there's like it's not like people completely trust book prizes. Like I feel like when we talk about book prizes, and I feel it's also in Germany from like the German book prize and so on, people are really critical. Like they're not seeing this long list as like the ultimate books of the year, whatever. There's a lot of back and forth. People talk about, is this book like worthy of being there? And maybe it's just also this German way of always challenging stuff.
Complaining about things, yeah.
So it's I feel like it's, you know, these big events, and then there's all this discussion around it. It's less like this huge number of different prizes.
Yeah, I think in the UK, it feels like a book prize or being shortlisted is like a recommendation. It's almost like free advertising for your book. You know, you get the sticker on there. And in the Germans, they just like to complain about these things. And to be fair, those book prizes are pretty much decided by dinosaurs. Like, you know, very few of it is actually relevant to how we read in the 21st century.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, I find that I'm happier if I ignore the book prize list, because I feel like the disappointment of not liking a book that's won a prize is like bigger than if it hadn't won the prize.
Yeah. I mean, what you said about the dinosaurs deciding on the books, in France, I really feel it the same way. Like, these prizes of the French Academy of Literature is like no normal person reads these books. No normal people read these books. And I feel like that's why there's this feeling of like, yeah, you don't necessarily trust it. You're like, okay, you just see what people are talking about and see for yourself if it's worth it or not. It's not like this clear stamp of approval for anyone to read these books.
Yeah, and I think in Germany especially, there's a big discrepancy between the books that win the prizes and the books that people read. Because in Germany, for example, crime fiction is huge. Like historical crime fiction, modern crime fiction, comedy crime fiction. Like the Germans just love crime fiction so much. You know, like I know that the British think that like the Swedish are these masters of crime fiction, but honestly, Germans, they love it and they're very good at it. And yet, that they're not the books winning the prizes. They're not the books that are like talked about in newspaper columns.
No one talks about a German
It's more like
thriller prize. There's nothing like that.
You see it almost like ironically. Oh yeah, like that's kind of cheap literature. It's like chick lit, you know. It's not really taken seriously, but it is such a big part of the literary landscape. And I wish that the Germans would be a bit less elitist about the kind of literature that they deem worthy, because I think if I was a writer, I would rather write crime novels that like sell and people love and people read than to write a philosophical literary novel that, you know, only some guy in some sort of academy reads and then gives a prize to.
Yeah, I feel like there's the same thing of elitarism in France. It's the same, like these big prizes, no normal person reads the books. And I mean, what you would call women's fiction is quite big in France.
Right.
I don't usually read it, but I know that it's very much beloved. And it's the same thing, like there's no prizes for that, and that's the books that sell the most.
You also said that like historical novels are quite big in France.
Yeah.
And are they kind of similar where like people buy them, but it's not the sort of books that win the prizes? Or
yeah, it's the typical books that sell really well on like get to paperback really fast, sell really well, that people gift each other or like lend each other and
probably recommend to each other as well.
And that's not the books that are being talked about on radio or whatever.
That is a shame. I think in the UK the lines are a lot more blurred, with books being considered for prizes that maybe wouldn't be considered for prizes here.
Yep.
And I think the genres are kind of more mixed as well. Like you can have a historic novel that is seen to be philosophical as well, whereas in Germany it's either one or the other. It can't be both. This turned into a discussion more about like the reading cultures and stuff, but I thought that was really interesting. And I'm kind of surprised that French and German cultures are so close together, because we in Germany are taught that French are basically aliens, like, you know. Turns out we are not that different.
Yeah, I don't know if this has something to do with just how close politically also France and Germany have been since the end of the Second World War, and I guess still are in some way. I mean, it's always...
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And I guess we also copy each other's policies and, see what work and apply it.
Yeah. And culture. I think the UK is culturally a lot more aligned to the United States. But I don't know that one system is better than the other in terms of reading and books.
It's just different, yeah.
Anyway, let us know what the reading culture and the book buying culture is like in your country, especially if it's different than what we've spoken about so far. I'd be interested from like American perspectives as well.
Some other European countries as well.
Yes, yeah. What's it like in the south of Europe if you're from Italy? Because even though my parents are Italian, I've never bought a book in Italy or read a book in Italian. But I'd be very interested to know what it's like all over the world. And check out Pauline's channel as well. Link in the description box. Okay, thank you for watching. Bye.